Each lie made the alien girl bleed, so he became the only honest human alive. He didn't mean to make her bleed. The words had slipped from his mouth. A harmless lie, the kind humans told every day to smooth over awkwardness, to comfort, to avoid pain. "You're safe now," he had said, kneeling beside her trembling figure as he wrapped his jacket around her thin, trembling shoulders. But in that moment, as the words left his lips, the alien girl's luminous skin split open like glass cracking under pressure, a thin red line blooming across her forearm with no blade in sight. He had recoiled, horrified, watching in disbelief, as the blood, shimmering like liquefied garnet, beaded and slid down her arm. Her eyes, glowing softly, impossibly wide, met his with a sadness too heavy for her fragile body. "That wasn't true," she whispered in a voice that sounded like starlight on water. "And lies hurt me." Mason Cade, former salvage pilot, turned planetary logistics grunt, hadn't believed in magic, soul bonding, or destiny. He believed in fuel ratios, repair costs, and keeping his head down. But here in a crater just outside New Denver's blast zone, crouched between smoldering concrete and the wreckage of a downed orbital shuttle, was something that shattered every known law of biology, psychology, and ethics. She wasn't human. Her pale, translucent skin shimmered like pearl under moonlight, and her hair floated unnaturally, as if underwater even in Earth's air. She was clearly young, maybe late teens by appearance, but it was her condition that made everything else irrelevant. Every time someone lied near her, her body reacted violently. It was as though the fabric of falsehood tore at her very being. Mason hadn't understood at first. How could he? The Federation didn't talk about this species, didn't prepare anyone for what to do if one crash-landed in your airspace. All he knew was that she didn't belong here, and if he didn't get her away from the panic, bureaucracy, and military scanners heading this way, she wouldn't last the hour. He carried her from the wreckage to the back of his hover truck, telling her nothing but facts. "My name is Mason. We're 3.2 miles from the city. I have medical supplies." She didn't bleed again. He drove fast, bypassing the checkpoints and cameras, cutting through the abandoned irrigation tunnels left over from the drought years. She stayed silent, curled in a fetal position on the blanket he tossed across the truck bed. Occasionally, she would glance at him, as if trying to measure the honesty of his thoughts. He stopped lying. It wasn't just fear. It became a kind of moral compulsion. Every instinct to soothe or simplify had to be strangled. He found himself telling her things he hadn't said aloud in years. That he used to be a good pilot until the drink ruined that. That he hadn't spoken to his brother in 5 years. That he was scared of dying alone. It wasn't a confession. It was survival, for her, and for the truth itself. By the time they reached his safe house deep in the eastern basin where the signal towers couldn't track unlicensed vehicles, she had stopped shaking. "My name is Sira," she said quietly as he opened the blast-proof door. He paused. "That's, beautiful," he said truthfully. She didn't bleed. Over the next few days, he learned more than he ever wanted to. Sira was from a race called the Alari, beings who evolved in a communication system based not on sound or symbols, but truth resonance. Among her people, lying was as foreign and poisonous as radiation. The Alari processed emotional honesty biologically, and their entire societal structure relied on absolute sincerity. When the Galactic Accord broke down, her planet had been offered as a research partner to the Human Federation, but she had escaped. Mason didn't ask what they had planned for her. The answer hovered in the air like a loaded weapon neither of them wanted to name. She was the only one left of her envoy, maybe of her kind, on Earth. And Earth was no place for an Alari. Humans lied as naturally as breathing. "If I go near them again," she told him as they patched an old solar panel together on the roof of the safe house, "I will bleed until I die. They can't stop lying, not even to help." Mason believed her. He believed everything she said, and more than that, he started measuring his words with surgical precision. It became a new language. Honesty as fluency, precision as care. He stripped himself down to the truth. sentence by sentence until Sira could be in the same room with him without fear. The first time she smiled at him, it wasn't because he made a joke. It was because he admitted he was lonely, and meant it. That smile was warmer than a sunrise on Mars. But danger crept closer. The shuttle wreckage hadn't gone unnoticed. Federation drones were already scanning the perimeter. A fugitive alien with bioreactive honesty? They wouldn't rescue her. They'd dissect her. Mason knew the Federation well. He had served in Border Patrol before resigning over an incident he still couldn't talk about without swallowing shame. One night, while Sira slept in the underground chamber he'd retrofitted with oxygen stabilizers and noise shields, Mason received a ping on a ghost channel, his old military contact, Juno. "We know what you're hiding," the message said. "Turn her in and we'll clear your debts. Fail and we take her by force." It wasn't a threat, it was a declaration. Mason didn't wake Sira. He couldn't lie to her, not even by omission. But he didn't tell her until morning. He made coffee, handed her a cup, and said, "They found us. They're coming. You have 1 day, maybe 2. I'm not leaving you." She bled, just a drop, a pinprick on her palm. He flinched. "That's not your lie," she said, wiping the blood away. "It's theirs. You're still clean." He felt like collapsing. Clean. When had anyone called him that? When had he been anything other than broken, disposable, a cog in the machinery of compromise? But here, with her, his words had weight. His truth mattered. And so he made a vow, not aloud, not yet, but deep in the marrow of his mind. He would become the one man on Earth who never lied, because her life depended on it. Because someone had to prove humanity could be better than this. That night, as Federation dropships circled the basin and the stars blinked down like ancient eyes, Mason sat beside Sira in silence. Both of them awake. Both of them afraid. She reached for his hand. Not out of romance, not yet. But something more vital. Trust. "They're going to lie to me," she said, her voice barely more than breath. "They'll try to trick me, make me think I'm safe." "They will," Mason replied. "But I won't let them." And he meant it. Every word. They came with promises first, not bullets. The Federation didn't need to fire weapons when it could use its oldest tools, propaganda, charm, and veiled threats dressed in polished uniforms. The next morning, a sleek black envoy transport landed just beyond the ridgeline, cutting through the stillness like a scalpel slicing open a wound. Mason watched through his binoculars from the rooftop, the cool morning breeze ruffling his collar as the 2 figures stepped onto the dry soil. Juno was among them, older, sharper than Mason remembered, her posture still ramrod straight, her eyes unreadable behind mirrored lenses. The man beside her, tall and smooth-voiced, carried a neutral smile and a small case in one hand. "Envoy first, tech second," Mason muttered, climbing back down into the safe house. Sira was already waiting at the kitchen table, pale and still, like a statue holding its breath. "They're not here to kill me yet," she said without needing to ask. "Not if they can use you," Mason answered honestly, setting down the binoculars and running a hand through his unshaven hair. "They'll offer something. Amnesty for me, maybe, a better containment for you. Maybe they'll say they want peace." Sira met his eyes. "And if you lie to them to protect me?" Mason hesitated. "You'll bleed, even if it's for you." She nodded. There was no anger in her face, only exhaustion and a kind of quiet, devastation that made his chest tighten. "Then I'll meet them too," she said, "but only if you speak first, so I can feel the difference." He opened the blast door slowly, blinking against the bright, cloudless daylight as the 2 envoys approached the perimeter. Mason stepped out with his hands up, palms open. "You're trespassing on private land," he called out. "This zone's decommissioned, off-grid, and legally mine. We're not here to dispute property rights," Juno replied, her voice clipped. "We're here for the alien girl you've been sheltering. We'd prefer to discuss this peacefully." Mason could feel Sira behind him, just out of view. "Then let's speak plainly," he said, lowering his hands. You're not here to help her, you're here to capture her. You want to study what she is, how she reacts. She's not a person to you, she's a phenomenon. The other envoy stepped forward, case still in hand. That's not true, he said with soft conviction. We want to protect her. Behind, Mason. Sira gave a soft cry and he knew, without turning, that blood had bloomed somewhere again. Mason spun to face them, fury creeping up his throat. She bleeds when you lie, he snarled. Do you get that? Do you even comprehend what kind of torture your words are? The man faltered. Juno stepped in. Mason, she said coolly, we're offering you a way out. You're in breach of interspecies contact protocols, but we can make this disappear. Give us the girl, and you get your life back. He laughed, sharp and humorless. My life? Back? You mean the one you broke when I refused to gas a refugee ship on the border? That life? She didn't respond. The silence was answer enough. Mason stepped aside, and Sira walked into view. The moment was electric, her presence luminous, delicate, dangerous. She stood with dignity despite the red line still drying on her cheek from the last falsehood. I will not return, she said softly, voice carrying like the edge of wind before a storm. You do not understand what I am, and you will kill me without ever using a weapon. Sira, the male envoy said, opening his case. This is a portable resonance stabilizer. It can suppress the physical symptoms of your condition. You could be around people again, hear lies without pain. And what's the cost? She asked, her tone sharp now. Neurological inhibitors? Chemical sedation? What will you take from me so your lies won't hurt anymore? Mason watched the envoy hesitate, his face flickering, and then, finally, he told the truth. Yes, the man admitted. There would be suppression, but we think it's worth the risk. For integration. And in that moment, Sira smiled. Not because she was pleased, but because no blood bloomed. He had told the truth. It was terrifying, but honest. And that made all the difference. Then you're closer to understanding than I thought, she said. But I still say no. Mason escorted them back to their transport. His shoulders squared, heart pounding. They didn't try to detain her, not yet. They knew it would look better on camera if she came willingly. But they wouldn't give up. That night Mason found Sira watching the stars from the bunker roof, her face lifted to the sky like she was listening for voices that couldn't reach this world. Do you think truth can survive here? She asked. In a place so full of noise? He sat beside her, arms resting on bent knees. I don't know, he answered. But I think if we stop trying, then we don't deserve to speak at all. She looked at him then, and for the first time he saw more than just survival in her eyes. He saw purpose. You've never lied to me, she said. Not once. Not since the first time, he admitted. That was the only one I needed, to learn the cost. Then I want to stay with you, she said. Even if we have to keep running, I'd rather bleed from the world's lies than bleed from your silence. He reached out and took her hand, gently, reverently. Then we'll stay honest, he said, even if we're the last ones. The stars above them didn't blink, they simply watched. The sky cracked open just past dawn, not with thunder but with a signal flare, brilliant green and trailing smoke like a serpent curling across the heavens, and both Mason and Sira knew instantly what it meant. The Federation was done waiting. There would be no more negotiations, no more truth-dressed lies. They were coming. Mason leapt from bed, heart thudding in the silence that followed the flare. He reached for his jacket, boots already half-laced from habit. Sira was awake before the echo of the flare had even faded, standing barefoot by the window, her silver eyes wide with sorrow, not fear. They'll bring the atmospheric seals this time, she said quietly, almost like a dream. They'll pretend it's for my safety, but it will choke me slowly while they monitor how long I can scream. Mason's jaw tightened, his hands shaking not from nerves but from a kind of cold fury he'd never truly let loose. not even in the war. Then we don't let them take you, he said, strapping on the comms belt. I've been building something. She turned to him, the faint light behind her outlining the delicate geometry of her features. Another safe house? He shook his head. Not a bunker, a bubble. And in that moment, her breath caught. You meant it? Mason gave a nod, opening the false wall behind the pantry shelves, revealing the hidden stairwell spiraling deep underground. 6 weeks of welding, sealing, calibrating the atmospheric systems with every scrap of alien-compatible data we had left on the black drives. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to give false hope. Not until it was stable. Sira's voice trembled. But why? Mason looked over his shoulder. Because I'd rather spend 100 nights fighting oxygen itself to keep you breathing than spend one more day watching you flinch at every word spoken around you. The descent into the hidden chamber felt like walking into a cathedral. The air was cool, filtered, humming with quiet machinery. In the center, suspended inside a transparent dome, was the containment bubble, a glowing sphere lined with pulse-activated regulators and oxygen conversion panels. The moment Sira stepped inside, her shoulders dropped, her muscles relaxing in a way Mason had never seen. She took a breath and didn't wince. Another. And her eyes began to shine. It doesn't hurt, she whispered. For the first time since I was taken from my planet, it doesn't hurt to breathe. Mason knelt beside the console. The system balances in real time, converts just enough of our air into your native blend. It's not infinite. I'll need to maintain it, feed it clean energy cells, recalibrate as your body adapts, but it's real. She turned slowly, her long hair floating behind her as the air currents moved gently around her skin. You built this for me. I built it because you deserved one place in the universe where you didn't have to bleed just to exist, he said. Then he looked away, swallowing hard. But it means something else, Sira. It means we can't run anymore. They'll find the signal this thing gives off eventually. The signature's too alien. It'll flag every scan within 50 clicks. She nodded, stepping back out of the bubble, reaching for his hand. Then we don't run. We make a stand, here, with truth, even if it's not enough. By midday, Federation drones appeared at the horizon, silent, silver dots sweeping the land like ants crawling toward a target. Mason knew the drills. They would observe first, analyze heat signatures, measure power surges. Within 12 hours, they'd have a tactical team on the ground. Within 24, they'd be breaking down the door. We'll need proof, Mason said, dragging crates from the basement into the main room. Something undeniable. A transmission that shows your reaction to lies and truth in real time. Let the whole net see it. Even the Federation has a limit to what it can cover up. Sira hesitated. You want to broadcast me? Just once, he said. Live. With no edits. You'll speak. They'll lie. You'll bleed. Then I'll speak. I won't lie. You'll stay still. And the world will watch the difference. She stepped forward and placed a hand on his chest. I trust you, but you must promise one thing. Anything, he said, his voice soft. Don't lie to them. Not even a little. Even to protect me. Let the pain show if you have to. Let them see how badly truth costs, but never abandon it. Mason met her gaze and nodded. I swear it. The makeshift studio went live at sunset. No graphics, no music. Just a single feed from an overhead camera, the kind used in old war zone. Reports, broadcasting directly to encrypted net channels Mason once used during the rebellion. The caption was stark. Truth hurts. Lies kill. Mason stepped into frame beside Sira, his voice even as he addressed the camera. My name is Mason Vell, former captain, dishonorably discharged for refusing to execute alien refugees. This is Sira. The Federation called her Subject Theta 9. I call her my friend. He looked down at her and she nodded. Watch, he said, and decide for yourself who we are. Juno's voice echoed through the speakers, recorded from their last meeting. We're offering protection. Sira blinked, and blood slid down her cheek, vivid red against her pale lavender skin. Another clip. The Federation believes in peace. More blood, this time from her nose. The camera didn't flinch. Then Mason turned to her. "Sira," he said gently, "I'm scared. I don't know if this will work, but I will stay beside you. Until the end." She looked up. No blood, no pain, only breath, only tears. "Thank you," she whispered, and leaned her forehead against his. Within hours, the broadcast had reached millions. Some mocked it. Others called it fake. But the ones who mattered, the broken, the grieving, the silenced, they saw it for what it was, a moment of truth in a world that had forgotten what it looked like. The next day, the storm came. Dropships rumbled through the skies like thunder, made solid. Federation boots hit the ground in perfect synchrony. Mason armed the perimeter traps. He knew they wouldn't kill anyone, but they'd slow the team long enough to make a point. Sira stood by the bubble, her fingers tracing the inside. "If they destroy this, I die," she said. "No," Mason replied. "If they destroy this, they prove everything we've shown, and I won't let it come to that." The soldiers breached the outer gate. Mason raised his hands and stepped outside. "I am unarmed," he shouted. "Don't shoot. I'll explain. Everything." The commander, helmeted and unreadable, signaled to a medic who advanced with a scanner. "Where's the alien?" "Inside," Mason said calmly. "But you'll speak to me first." The commander spoke. "She's under protection order." "That's a lie," Mason interrupted. Sira coughed inside the bubble. "She's bleeding again. Your voice just proved her point." The soldiers hesitated. One lowered his weapon. Another looked away. Mason stepped forward. "Truth hurts," he said, "but it can heal too. Ask her something, truthfully." The commander was silent. Then finally he removed his helmet. A scar ran along his jaw. "Is it true," he asked, his voice cracking slightly, "that you fear humans more than death?" Sira nodded. "Yes," she said. "But not all humans." Mason smiled faintly. And in that fragile silence, something shifted. The soldiers didn't open fire. The commander didn't give the order. For the first time, choice entered the picture. And so did consequence. The air held its breath. Mason stood still, his arms raised, his eyes locked with the unhelmeted Federation commander whose voice, trembling, uncertain, had just caused the alien girl inside the bubble to bleed less, not more. Around them, the soldiers faltered. Their training had not prepared them for this. An enemy that didn't shoot, didn't lie, didn't fight with weapons but with raw, unbearable truth. Sira remained seated inside the transparent sphere Mason had built beneath the earth, her knees folded to her chest, the skin along her temples streaked faintly with dried blood from earlier lies. But now, no fresh wounds marred her glowing, lavender complexion. And in her steady, unblinking gaze, there was something Mason hadn't seen in her for weeks. Hope. The commander spoke again, more softly this time, almost like a confession rather than a command. "How do I know this isn't just a performance, a viral trick?" Mason stepped forward, careful, slow, palms out. "Then lie to her," he said, simply. "Say something false about anything, something harmless." The man hesitated, then muttered, "I'm not scared." Instantly, a thin line of blood slid from the corner of Sira's eye. One of the younger soldiers swore under his breath and stepped backward. The commander's expression crumbled. "It's real," he whispered, eyes wide. This changes everything." Mason nodded once. "She's not a weapon, not a threat, not some experiment you need to control. She's a truth mirror, forced to suffer for our inability to be honest with ourselves." Then he looked over his shoulder at her and lowered his voice. "But she's also more than that. She's a girl who's never been given the choice to live without pain, and I'm done letting her pay the price for our lies." The commander took off his gloves and approached slowly. He stopped 2 feet from the dome. "Sira," he said, carefully enunciating each syllable. "If I tell you that I believe you should be free, will it hurt?" She stared at him, unreadable. "Say it," she whispered, "but only if it's true." The man closed his eyes. "I believe you should be free." Nothing happened. No blood, no twitch, just stillness. And then Sira smiled. It was the smallest thing, a twitch of her mouth, a soft light in her eyes, but it was real. The dome's sensors flickered green as the airflow recalibrated, responding to her body's shift in stress levels. Mason breathed out deeply, as if he'd been underwater this entire time. But he didn't relax. Not yet. Because one show of truth from a man, no matter how senior, wouldn't be enough to dismantle the quiet machinery of systemic cruelty. "This doesn't end here," Mason said. "They'll still want her, still think she's useful. The Federation doesn't erase things it fears. It studies them, controls them." "Not anymore," the commander said firmly. "Not after this. I have to report back, but I'll report what I saw, what we all saw." He looked at his team. "And you'll back me?" They nodded, hesitant but sincere. Then, for the first time, the commander turned to Mason. "You'll need protection from the ones who won't want this truth to survive. There are worse forces than me coming." Mason's jaw tightened. "I figured. You'll go off-grid," the man said. "Both of you. I'll delay the reports. Say the subject was never located." "And the footage?" Mason asked. "It's out there," the commander replied. "Even I can't stop it now. Let it spread. Let it do what truth always does. Grow." That night, Mason and Sira left the dome behind. He salvaged what he could. The oxygen converters, the filtered gels, the nutrient packs, and buried the rest beneath a layer of explosives, wired to a deadman switch. If they came looking for it, it would be rubble before it became a prison. Their journey led them deep into the forested canyons of the north, a region where old rebel cells once hid from orbital scans. Sira wore a breathing scarf laced with fine nanofiltration fabric Mason rigged from salvaged medkits, allowing her to survive limited time outside the safe bubble of converted air. She didn't complain, not once. But the weight of it all, the hiding, the fear, the relentless need to be invisible, hung between them like fog. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked one night as they huddled near a geo-warmed rock bed, stars shimmering overhead. "After all this running?" Mason poked at the small flame between them. "Sometimes, but only if it includes you." She tilted her head. "Even if I can't breathe your air?" "Then I'll change my air," he said. "Or find more. Like you. Maybe you're not the only one." Her fingers brushed his wrist gently. "There are others," she whispered. "Hidden, hurt, conditioned to flinch at words. You'll know them because they never speak first and always wait to be told who they are." "Then I'll find them," he said, "and tell them they're more." Time passed. Weeks, then months. The net boiled with debate. The broadcast had gone viral. Not flashy viral, but the kind that refuses to die. Forums split, news outlets debated, lawmakers bickered, and the truth did what it always did. Slowly crept into the cracks until nothing stayed hidden anymore. Eventually, the Federation was forced to respond, not with bullets, but with policy. Trials opened. Declassification orders were issued. The term bleeder protocol was whispered only in shame by those who once believed in it. Mason watched from afar, never stepping back into the spotlight. He didn't need to. The world had already seen what it needed. And Sira had grown. She no longer flinched when humans spoke nearby. She corrected lies now, softly, kindly, but without apology. When others came, hidden aliens, hybrids, the almost human, she taught them how to listen for truth, how to build spaces they could breathe in without bleeding. And Mason, ever at her side, built more bubbles. Dozens, hundreds, Each one proof that honesty was not just possible, but necessary for survival. And when the first new colony opened, a sanctuary planet co-funded by Earth and the surviving alien embassies, Sira was asked to cut the ceremonial ribbon. She did not bleed that day. And when she stepped to the podium and looked at the crowd, her voice didn't tremble. "I was once told that each lie would kill me slowly," she said. And I believed it, because for a time it was true. But then someone chose truth. Not the easy kind, not the performative kind, but the kind that cost him safety and comfort and silence. He chose it anyway. And because he did, I lived. She looked to Mason, standing behind the scenes, his arms crossed, eyes shining. "So if you remember nothing else from today," she said, "remember this. Honesty doesn't just make us better people. It makes us capable of sharing a world." The crowd stood. No one clapped. They just stood. Quiet. Moved. Honest. Mason took her hand as she stepped down. "That was incredible," he said. "You didn't even flinch." "I didn't have to," she said, smiling. "There was no lie to wound me." He squeezed her hand gently. "So, ready to go home?" She looked at the stars above. "Only if you're there with me." And in the end, the galaxy did not erupt in war or peace, but something more enduring. Truth. Spoken one word at a time. Lived. Bled for. Believed.